had a great weekend, and welcome to the Irish Pub, the hotel lobby, second floor in Atlantic City on this first Sunday in October. I'm meteorologist Dan Skeldon, and welcome to Tidal Flooding Talk. Palma off this week, so we're going to bring in our guests, and I guess in this week, a co-host as well, meteorologist Jim Eberwine. And of course, we always say who needs no introduction.
I got a promotion to co-host.
I did.
I thank you very much.
All right, well, we'll see if it's a permanent one. Maybe Palmer's back next week and you bump me off. I think our director Tom would like that.
Sitting in a room like this, you get that kind of get that feeling. Let's bump this guy up.
Well, we are in like a very, just a very like antique Irish pub hotel lobby. We're properly socially distanced, and we're here to talk whatever you guys want to talk about. We are still in hurricane season. It's in October. Yep. We're out of the Greek alphabet. We're going to talk about some Greek letters, Gamma and Delta tonight. Yep. We have 2 full moons this month, including a full blue moon on a Saturday night Halloween. So who knows what that will bring.
I love Halloween, my favorite day.
It is. It's a cool holiday.
I just hope it's clear.
Hope it's clear, and hope it's normal this year where, you know, there's trick-or-treating.
Yep.
And,
oh, absolutely.
You know, it is a great holiday. Yeah. I'm Thanksgiving, then Halloween myself. And Halloween's, especially with the daughter now, with Kenzie, I think that's going to continue to rise the list.
Right. Absolutely.
All right, so we, of course, welcome you to ask your questions or comments. We are going to chat a little bit about weather. Tidal Flooding Talk brought to you each and every week by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. Every Sunday, 7 p.m., at least most weekends, we are here, and we are talking weather. And I guess we'll start with the tropics and hurricane season, since, you know, it's been a busy year. We blew through the alphabet. There were a lot of names that were, you know, pretty short-lived, kind of wasted names. Yeah. We've had a couple of impacts here. Right. We had Faye, which was rain. Right. And we had Isaias, which was a little more significant wind. Yeah. And tornadoes too.
And then these we had Josephine, but we noticed that only in terms of tides. Right. We had Josephine come up as high pressure was coming down, so the tides were elevated for several days. And then that went away. Then we had another high pressure come down as Sally was moving off the coast. Right. So you had that gradient too to deal with, not only here, but all the way down to Florida. My friends in Florida were telling us we're getting some real, well, now we call them king tides, right? Isn't that what king tide? So yeah, we had actually the four effects, but Isaias being the worst.
Right. So and we have them all, right? Because Faye was rain, Isaias was wind, and the other two, Sally and Josephine, were tidal flooding. Right. So, of course, our worst case scenario is you combine all those together with a more significant storm. And thankfully, we haven't had that. And the worst of the storms this year have not been the East Coast, have not really even been the Caribbean. It's been the Gulf.
The Gulf.
And
now they're faced with another one.
At least one more. I mean, Gamma is more Mexican storm.
Yeah, they Campeche.
Right. So there was Yucatan and Cancun and that area, and it's mostly Mexico, no threat to the U.S. But we have a developing tropical system. So let's talk about that. That'll be Delta. Are you brushing up on the Greek alphabet during all this?
I called my friend Ernie from Sesame Street. I said, what do you do when you run out of letters? He said, well, this is what you have to do. So I've been studying the Greek alphabet. And before that, well, you could say this season's all Greek to me. So
that's right. I have been saying that. And the last time we used Greek letters, the only time we used Greek letters was 2005, right? And I think we made it to the 6th letter, which was beta or Eta.
Eta.
Yeah.
Well, they have Zeta.
Or Zeta. It may have been Zeta. I'm sorry, Zeta.
They kind of screw up their alphabet.
Right. Yeah. So Z is the 6th letter. Zeta. You got Eta. You got Beta. I don't know one iota about the Greek alphabet. Right. But Delta is the upcoming storm.
And where's it going?
Into the Gulf.
Into the Delta.
Into the Delta, the Mississippi Delta of Louisiana.
You'll see that in the headline, Delta on Delta or something like that.
And it could be a bad story because we've seen the Gulf. You know, we saw it with Katrina exploding. We saw Laura before it hit Southwest Louisiana explode. And I mean, even though it's October, the Gulf is still very warm. So Delta could be a big problem for somebody depending on what happens.
Well, it's going right over that loop current.
Right.
The loop current that just kind of swirls around there, not only on the top, but very deep. It's very warm. So absolutely. And a lot of these storms, you look at the lapse rate, how warm it is down here and how cold it is up here. Here we're getting into the fall.
Yep.
So the greater the difference in the temperatures on the ground and aloft, the stronger it comes.
Right.
So yeah, that one's going to bear watching. And the Hurricane Center's been very, very careful with these storms. And in this one here too, they've already said it's a potential tropical storm.
Right.
So they're pretty sure this one's going to grow.
And then they've had a pretty good year,
Yes.
as far as forecasting, as far as the, intensity is always more problematic than track, because storms can weaken rapidly, they can really intensify rapidly. But they've had a pretty good year as far as forecasting storms. When storms go into the Gulf, do we on the East Coast have to be, concerned?
Well,
more concerned, less concerned than say there's a storm farther out into the ocean.
Oh yeah. When they go in the Gulf, we get the heavy rain events.
Right.
And in some cases, and they've had them come up and off of Hatteras and then re-intensify and then kind of parallel the rest of the way up the coast. But yeah, we look at that, especially if they go into Louisiana, Arkansas, if they get east of the Appalachians,
Right.
then with the heavy rain event, and if there's a trough sitting out there, it'll just bring that rain up. So we look at it in those terms, but when you think back to Isaias, which went into North Carolina,
Right.
southern North Carolina, look at the wind we got from that.
Right.
That was powerful. That was
And those are our worst threats, the storms that come up the East Coast. Once they're into the Gulf, you're surrounded by land more or less.
Right.
So you're going to have rain be the only thing we would get.
Right.
And we're not guaranteed to get the rain. It's just depending on where the remnants track, we can get heavy rain events. When storms come up the East Coast, that's when we have problems. In October, now Sandy being an exception,
Right.
do we still have to, regularly worry in October? As
Well,
our waters cool, and I know hurricane season runs through November 30th, but what's our level of concern as we continue to progress through October?
Well, we had, when I was a young boy in Philadelphia, we had Hazel.
Right.
Remember
54. Yeah.
Hazel blew through the Carolinas, the hurricane force winds in Philadelphia where I live. And I can remember it because the streets are narrow in the city, and the winds funnel down there, and the cars, you can actually see the cars that was a powerful hurricane. So especially, that's a good point, Dan, as you transition from the tropics to the fall season. In 2009, we had what was once Ida,
Right.
turned into the Veterans Day storm.
Right, and then
That
some
was
people called it Nor-Ida, right?
Nor-Ida.
Because it was a nor'easter.
Saying it's hard to hear?
Is it hard to hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't following along the comments.
Kristen Kaiser is one of our best people, and she
Yeah,
says it's hard to hear.
Okay, I'm not sure if we can talk up a little bit. Not sure why it's hard to hear, Kristen, but hopefully, if we project a little bit more, you can hear. We do have, there's no background noise, which is great. We're up in the hotel lobby, and it's nice and quiet. But we'll try to project a little bit more and let us know if that works. But yeah, and I guess what's one thing about October into November is you're in hurricane season still,
Right.
but the more informal nor'easter season is beginning.
Right.
And we can, from mid-October on, get nor'easters or maybe the hybrid storms, a kind of combination of both, which of course the perfect storm was back in 91. It was a combination of Hurricane Grace and some other systems.
Right,
So.
right, and that's what we look at, because that November storm, we call it the Veterans Day storm.
Right.
It was powerful. It was very, very powerful, and had quite an impact. Ida went off the coast, and it ran into that, and so again, we have to be very vigilant from this point forward, because I can remember you and I sitting in Ocean City and an auditorium, and everybody was kind of dismissing the hurricane season in 2012.
Right.
And along came Sandy. So, it's very interesting. A lot of these storms this year happened in the first part of the hurricane season. A couple of them were out of season.
In
right?
May, yeah, because hurricane season begins June 1st.
June 1st,
and we
yeah.
had 2 or 3 storms in May, I believe.
And NOAA, I think when NOAA updated their August 8th forecast, they said you're going to have now possibly up to 25 named storms. So we have one left, right, to meet that forecast.
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, and the good thing is we haven't had a Category 5 this year. We came close with Laura, and we've only had another Category 3, I think.
Right.
So we've been lucky in terms of intensity.
And that's something that, you know, we don't hear about it in TV meteorology or in the public too much, but everyone focuses on the number. All right, we're on the 25th storm this year already. There's something called ACE, which is the accumulated cyclone energy.
Right.
And for the number of storms we've had this year, we haven't had a whole lot of ACE. So that number, meaning if the ACE is really high, it means you have a lot of powerful storms.
Right.
We've had a couple, but a lot of them have been rather weak.
I think we are, well, the Pacific is almost so quiet this year.
Right.
So,
They're on M, I believe,
Yeah.
which is Marie. And normally the Pacific is way ahead of us.
They're through at the second alphabet
Right.
sometimes. But
Right.
yeah, but it's been very, very quiet out there. But so we're taking up the slack here. And the other thing too, which makes it difficult for forecasting here on the East Coast, if I was a hurricane forecaster and they said, Jim, where do you want to forecast for, the Gulf or the East Coast? I would say, I'll take the Gulf, because I know if I say this storm's going to make landfall, it's going to make landfall.
Right, because the
But,
Gulf is basically landlocked,
Yeah.
I mean,
Once you
more or
get it
less.
in there,
Yes, it's
once
not
you
going
get
to
it-
turn around and go out.
No, no.
Right.
But along the eastern seaboard, how many times have we been humbled by it's going to go right into this, and all of a sudden it goes like Gloria in '85.
And I know more recently that east coast of Florida, where, you know, they're bracing, they're evacuating the whole east coast of Florida. Michael, I mean, Floyd, right, did the same thing.
The big one down in the Bahamas, Dorian.
Oh, Dorian, right,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, powerful Category 5s that sunk that ship, that big
Yeah.
tanker, all those people were killed. But here it comes like this, and then I remember after Andrew in '92, we had Floyd in '99.
Right.
And Floyd was coming right toward Miami, and they evacuated. It was the largest peacetime evacuation up to that point. And then at the last minute, the Hurricane Center, to their credit, said it's going to come and turn.
Right.
And
And it
boy,
did.
did it come and turn. But everybody had evacuated.
Right. And then that makes it tough, and that's a popular issue on this show. We always preach storm readiness when it comes to hurricanes, nor'easters, anything that can cause flooding, storm surge. And evacuations is always an issue, because I mean, let's say you're in eastern Florida and you get out of Dodge because Michael's coming, and you're gone for days, and it's a hassle.
Yep.
Nothing happens. I mean, no hurricane force winds. Are you going to evacuate the next time? We saw that with, you know, Irene versus Sandy versus Hermione back on Labor Day weekend in 2000 and what was it, 16, 17?
Yeah, 16.
So, you know, evacuation's always a troublesome thing because of the uncertainty of forecasting. You should always evacuate when they tell you to evacuate, but we know that's not going to be the case.
Well,
not everyone's going to abide by it.
And the other thing too, that you look at the hurricane forecasters, and they're just like us, they're human. And when you looked at Hermione when it was coming up, there's no way they were going to turn that storm loose.
Right.
In other words, say it's all over.
Right.
There was no way, because it was a holiday, like you said, and the track models had it coming back this way. And there was no way they were going to turn that storm loose and say, all right, put your guard down. There's no way. After Sandy.
Right.
Especially after Sandy.
And so, I mean, are we out of the wood? Do you think, you know, 9 times out of 10, we're to October 4th now, you know, is the East Coast, I mean, is South Jersey, you know, what are our chances of, you know, breathing a sigh of relief and saying, all right, we made it through the rest of the system? I'm sorry, made it through the rest of the hurricane season.
Well, you mean, will we have a letter on our beach?
Yes.
Or a Greek letter on our
Correct.
beach? Yeah.
Correct.
The chances are always decent. And again, what's happening now? If you were to look down from the International Space Station, you'd see a big old H in the center of the Atlantic, and the circulation's like this. So it's forcing these storms across the southern part into the Caribbean, into the Gulf. But once that big H moves this way, up toward the Azores, now that track, instead of being this way, is going to come this way.
Right.
And that frequently happens. So is there enough juice left in the Atlantic, enough warmth in the Atlantic to have one of these storms really intensify, and then an upper level bridge sits in place, like Sandy? Yeah, you never write it off. You never write it off.
And we always say too, people think, and they thought this, and this is human nature, and this is fine, you know, all right, it's late October, and the water's getting colder, so there's no way a hurricane can, you know, get up the coast.
Right.
You know, our water temperature has very little to do with our hurricane susceptibility. It's the water temperatures down where they form, and yes, a storm will weaken, but if it's moving pretty fast, or if it's like Sandy undergoing a transition to more of a nor'easter, it still can pack a punch. So pay no attention to our water temperature. That does not diminish our hurricane
Well,
threat.
what made Isaias so powerful here in terms of wind was not so much what was happening down here, but that 200 millibar jet, or up around 30 to 40,000 feet, that fueled that. And that made that accelerate, and that's why we had those 75 to near 100-mile-an-hour winds.
And in the tornadoes, I think 110, right?
We issued, that's right, we issued, no, I say we, I still think
I still could say
I haven't gotten a paycheck from them for a long time.
Force of habit, right?
The Weather Service issued 20 tornado warnings that day.
Which is crazy for this part of the country.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
Atlantic County lucked out, but Marlboro got one, LBI got one. There was a few up in eastern PA. I mean, it was a crazy storm. And when we talk tropical systems in this part of the country, we always say water is worse than wind, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Every tropical system, when it comes onshore, can create tornadoes. We saw that with Isaias. Wind is going to be a factor. 75 to 100. You're probably not going to get, the category 3s, 4s, 5s up here.
Yeah.
Most storms the water is the bigger deal here. The water from heavy rain and the water from storm surge that brings tidal flooding. So 9 times out of 10, I would think, if you agree with that, or something along those lines, it is water. It's just with Isaias, it was wind and tornadoes.
I've done a lot of surveys, post-storm surveys, analysis with tornadoes and things like that, and also with hurricanes with the Corps and JD, people up and down the coast. And when I looked at the water damage, that is devastating. That is totally devastating. When you see the wind damage, you say, yeah, that'll be fine in a couple of days. But water damage, no, it's taken years. They're still not. I think some homes are still not back after Sandy.
And that's what, eight years this
So
later this month.
Water damage is devastating, absolutely devastating. I'd much rather have the wind damage myself.
And do you think Sandy and recent storms, Jonas, and just the frequency of tidal flooding, did it bring a better understanding of storm surge? Sandy and Jonas, with tidal flooding and levels, and now the Hurricane Center issues storm surge warnings and watches, which is a product they didn't issue before.
Right.
Do you think there's a better understanding of that in New Jersey now?
Oh, I think so. A lot of what you're seeing, NWS and NOAA, which is the parent organization, a lot of that is based on what happened with Sandy. A lot of it. So you're seeing these upgrades. You're seeing these storm surge models, the potential storm surge forecasts like they've been doing with the storm. Absolutely, absolutely. And if we get a storm, you'll see now, unlike Sandy, where we were kind of in the blind, left in the dark, I should say, because Sandy was not, the Hurricane Center was not handling it. They turned it over to the National Weather Service instead of being specifically out of the Hurricane Center. But the next time you see one coming up the coast, we're going to see all the fancy artwork with the storm surge. Who's going to, like Wardley Beach was blasted.
Right.
You're going to see more attention paid to these places, and you're going to see more programs coming out promoting hurricane surge safety as a result of Sandy. So, and the other thing too, Dan, we have, which is extremely valuable, we have file footage.
Yes.
We never had file footage before. We used to look at hurricane down in the Gulf and say, oh, that could happen.
Right.
But now we know this did happen here.
And that's something we always bring up. And one of the benefits from Sandy, and now there's a benefit of homes being destroyed and flooded, is we have a measuring stick now. So if people say, hey, this will be up to 8 feet, and this will be Sandy-like. This will be a foot higher than Sandy, a foot less than Sandy. People know, all right, I know I got this much water in my house for Sandy, now I'm going to get this much or this much. You have a measuring stick. Before, if you said that the tide's going to get to 8.2 feet, people had no idea what that meant. Now you have a gauge, a yardstick.
Yeah. Well, when I first came down here from the Philadelphia office in '77, I would go up down on the beach, and all I heard was 62, and I'm thinking, what the heck are these guys talking about, 62? That was the benchmark storm.
Yep.
And then again, I mentioned to you on this program before, when I worked, I always used to, as I got into the fall and winter season, go in search of the 62 storm, which meant learning about it, but then also looking at the weather maps to see anything that resembled that is in the forecast.
Right.
Because if it was, it would have been devastating. Because again, hurricanes are powerful, but they'll affect like Louisiana, Texas. The nor'easter affected the Carolinas up to New England.
Right.
I mean, that was a powerful, powerful storm.
Right, and the 62 storm, for those of you who, didn't experience it, was a nor'easter. Was a nor'easter, not a hurricane. It was March.
Right.
The water was cold, but it was a nor'easter that stalled. And some people who survived it say, hey, it was worse than Sandy. It was this was our benchmark storm for parts of the Jersey Shore, parts of the Mid-Atlantic.
Well, the other thing too, I think you mentioned it the last time we spoke, was you evacuate in a hurricane, but you don't in a winter storm. But we came close in Jonas. Remember, a lot of people were without power. They are considering possibly looking at evacuation in intense winter storms because, like you said, the water's cold, it's poured into your house, your electricity's out, and it's going to be cold for the next so many days. So where are you going to put these people? And so they're thinking of perhaps sheltering in a winter storm.
Now, are there challenges to that? Hurricane, we start talking about it when there's a wave, then it's a depression, a storm, you can see it coming, hurricane watches, evacuation's fine. Nor'easters, usually you have some lead time, but it's not quite as clear cut. Sometimes they can intensify pretty quickly. So are there challenges to, say, evacuating from a tidal flooding, a significant tidal flooding induced nor'easter in the wintertime? I think it's a great idea, but there have to be some challenges due to the shortened lead time.
Oh yeah, the shortened lead time and where are you going to set up the shelter because you don't know how powerful the storm, what its impact, how far inland it's going to be. And then, like in Jonas, they were considering getting people out and putting them in 15, 8 inches of snow.
Right.
So that was another problem that was there. So yeah, that's going to be more difficult to do. Again, we haven't had a real serious nor'easter or powerful one that would cause that over a widespread area. So
and that's what you would need. You would need a slow-moving nor'easter that would generate, major flooding for a tide or 2 or 3.
Right.
And again, be able to forecast that, be able to pinpoint that, because I know in Jonas's case, we weren't forecasting record tidal flooding for the Cape May County shoreline.
No.
And for Delaware, the winds were more intense, the storm was more intense, you gotta get the track right. So tidal flooding forecasting, while it's come a long, long way, and oftentimes, when they say moderate flooding, 7.5 feet, it's right in that ballpark. But the major storms, just like major hurricanes, can offer challenges to forecasting the wind direction, exactly what the winds are gonna be at your high tide times, and therefore exactly how high that tide is going to be.
It's funny you should mention, I was reading a book by Isaac Klein. You know Isaac
Yes.
Klein? He was a guy from the Galveston.
You actually, I think you gave me that book.
The
Galveston book.
The Galveston, yes. Well, he talked about the winds were blowing offshore, but the tide was coming in. And what happened was the winds were blowing offshore and packing the tide up against the storm, and then they released it. In Jonas, for 4 days before Jonas's flooding, we had blowout tides.
Yeah.
And it was packing the water up offshore, and when the wind switched to the east and they went up to 80 miles an hour, it came rushing in, and people said that tide coming in for Jonas was faster than they had seen. And witness, man, it just came pouring in.
And that's something else we can learn as forecasters, learn from these storms and factor that in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been listening to Tidal Flooding Talk on this Sunday evening. Meteorologist Jim Eberwine is our guest. Paul McCarty will be back next Sunday. And appreciate all your comments, and hi to all our viewers tonight. Eagles getting ready to play. You got a forecast for the lackluster start to the Eagles season this year? Is it going to be another tie, or do you think there'll be a decisive either way?
I think it's going to be a decision for the West Coast.
Okay. But I believe the Cowboys lost, the Redskins lost,
big time.
and the Giants lost.
the Eagles will be in
So
first place.
the Eagles will be first place at 1, 2, and 1. It's quite a division this year in the NFC East.
Or 0-3.
Or 2 and 1. It's incredible. My Patriots, Cam Newton has COVID, so
Right.
hope he's recovering well, And
Brady
we're
won
playing
today.
tomorrow night now.
Brady won today, right?
Brady won today. In fact, the Patriots tomorrow night, they're going to play. They moved the game tomorrow night, 7 p.m., are the biggest underdogs they have been since the first Super Bowl Brady was in with the Rams when they were 14-point underdogs.
Yeah.
They have not been a bigger underdog since then until tomorrow night when they're 11-point underdogs. So,
Wow.
well, we'll see. Things have changed in the NFL.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate all you guys watching. Next weekend, we're going to actually Palma, myself, and meteorologist Joe Martucci working on a project for the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. We're hoping for nice weather. Nice weather is forecast, so you know it's going to rain all weekend.
It's going to rain all week.
But it does look to be a nice weekend. Weather-wise, this week, Jim, we got no big storms, just some up and down temperatures, right?
Up and down
More than
temperatures. Yeah. This thing is sliding off the coast right now.
Right.
We'll get a few spits tomorrow morning, but that'll be it.
That's it.
The rest
And
of the
then-
week looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think Tuesday and Wednesday are warm. Thursday and Friday are cool.
Yeah.
No tidal flooding forecast this week, which is good.
No.
We just had the first full moon of October, the harvest moon.
Harvest moon.
Next one comes up in
Halloween.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Halloween night. It's the first full moon on Halloween across the U.S. since 1944.
Uh-oh.
Something else happened that year,
What
right?
happened? Yeah, September
September 44, the hurricane.
Uh-oh.
That's right.
See that?
We don't want to
Oh,
foreshadow
my God.
anything.
Yeah.
There was an earthquake in 44 as well,
Yeah.
I believe, too.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's going to be a storm on the East Coast. Right.
Jim, I thank you as always.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
And we're going to get you an Irish pub collectible to add to your collection.
I'm going
Since
to take
this
a
is
few
your
of these paintings with
yeah,
me.
yeah. It will be like the old Wheel of Fortune, where
Oh,
you're in the
Wheel of
showroom, and you can kind of say, "I'll take the lamp, and
I'll take the
this."
lamp. Yeah, what's behind that door over there? I'll take that.
Appreciate you as always for being here,
All right,
Jim
Joe.
Eberwine. We'll see you back here probably in about 3 or 4 months. You seem to average every few months, and we'll be back next Sunday night with Palma and guests from the Irish Pub. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, thanks to the Irish Pub, and thanks to all you guys for being here tonight. We'll see you back here next week.